Figured it'd be a good idea to start the morning by evaluating our performance yesterday with both planters. If you drive fast enough, you really can't tell how good of a job you did, so I'm not slowing down. Still a little bit on the breezy side this morning. Ground is a little chunky. There we go, finally found one. It's actually already imbibed some moisture. See, it's swollen up. It's already starting its life. I'm happy with that. Although the ground wasn't in the best condition, so we are going to need a rain at some point. You can see right here where our spiked closing wheels ran. Each one of those is where the spikes came around. Pretty neat what they do. And don't worry, we are going to get rain. That's today's forecast. It's going to move in about 4 p.m. It's going to cool off temperature-wise. And just today they're calling for 1.29 inches. The unfortunate reality, although we're ready to go, work more ground, plant more crops, we're pretty much out of dry ground. We need a couple more days of warm weather to really get that moisture out of the top couple inches of soil. That way we're not planting these seeds into the mud. It may be dry on top, but once you get under that crust, a lot of times the soil is still rather sticky. We don't want to smear it in there on the bottom, create any kind of issues with compaction, because that's the last thing your seedlings need to work against is very tight soils. As I'm sure you could tell, we're not at our home farm here. We're actually at our Pioneer dealers to the north. Jeff and Katie were up here running both field cultivators, and our new to us field cultivator has sprung a hydraulic leak in the tongue tubing, and we left it up here so we could fix it and kind of go from there. First step of fixing your problem is diagnosing it. We know it's in the tongue somewhere. It's 5. Yeah, that was quick. Was it exposed or is it in the tubing?
It's right there.
Oh, well, that's better than in there. That is, well, yeah, it's the worst looking line too. It probably is actually tornado damage.
Yeah, I know.
Is it gonna fit through there?
I doubt it.
There we go.
Okay.
Lions tractor to save the day. Now we get a new hose.
I don't like that. Got it. Hold the hose.
Looks like we've patched our leak with an entire new line. We're gonna go finish what this field cultivator was working on last night before it broke down. Thanks to Bruce Daly, our Pioneer dealer, for letting us use his lot and get hydraulic oil everywhere. I worked about a 50-foot spin around and noticed I was tracking in a strange way off the middle. I inspected the field cultivator in that area, and what I've determined is that shank or sweep right there is bent downward a little bit, causing it to work deeper than the rest, and honestly too deep for what we're trying to accomplish here. So we're going to either hit off the sweep or take off the shank itself. My dad's a madman. If you're not under there with the tools, the minute you notice a problem, he'll beat you to it. And on the way down there, he'll clonk his head and get a cut. But he's just a little different, cut from a different cloth than most. 6 months ago, this field was completely covered in debris. And I'm sure we didn't get it all, so I'm going to keep my eyes peeled for any large objects I need to miss. I value the tires on the tractor highly, and the field cultivators are a close second. So we're going to be very vigilant here, get these weeds worked in. That way we have a nice clean seed bed for after this next rain. God bless RTK lines to make working the ends easy. It's literally going to be picture perfect. We're in a little bit of a management pickle right here. They're calling for about 1.5 inches of rain starting in 2 or 3 hours. We've got 110 acres there to the south. That's our personal farm ground we own. And then we have this short 50-acre field here that we work with a landowner who just bought it within the last year. Now this has 120 pounds of anhydrous applied in the fall, so we're not worried about nitrogen here though, but because this is a new acquisition for this landlord in terms of management decisions, there's no nitrogen put on this farm. They're wanting to put 70 pounds of 32 on prior to planting or in the planting window. We want that nitrogen to get on ahead of the planter preferably. I'd like for it to be worked in either with the field cultivator or with the rain. I was also hoping to apply some atrazine at the same time to help keep some weeds at bay. However, no one is going to spray any kind of chemical today with this wind. I prefer to just be planting both of these fields. However, with that big rain in the forecast, I just don't know that that's the wisest agronomic decision, especially with such little time between working it, planting it, and the rain coming. No real amount of time for it to air out. That can really present an issue with germination, emergence, and then at the end of the day, your yield. So I think we're going to wait, having it worked, get the fertilizer sprayed. That'll have us lined up to go pretty hard on these 2 fields once it dries back up. First time I've stopped in the field for a piece of junk. Wasn't concerned about that tire, but who knows what would happen going all the way through. It's like a flat tire device with nails on every side. I never claimed that we did a perfect job. I'm rather surprised at the fuel efficiency on this. We're only burning 1/2 gallon of fuel per acre, which is much lower than I thought it would be. You can hear the tractors pulling down in a wet spot right now. We're going 0.6, but overall, really, really impressive. But when you look at the gallons per hour, you're burning a lot of money out here in totality, but when you look at it on an individual sense, really not using that much for a tillage pass. I know some of you are kind of interested in the metrics and the efficiencies of what we're doing out here. For comparison, I planted 300 acres of soybeans yesterday, and I burnt about 125 gallons of fuel. So that's kind of in that 4/10 to 5/10 a gallon per acre of fuel. Combine these 2 passes together, really relatively cheap. Even with $4 to $5 diesel fuel, you're accomplishing a lot out here with this tool especially, versus what it would cost to come out here and spray herbicide to kill these weeds. The planter, I'm actually surprised. That was a close call. Hopefully there's not a nail right there. At times, it definitely may appear like I'm not paying attention because I'm talking on the camera, but on the contrary, I'm actually paying attention to so many different things at once that it doesn't look like I'm paying attention at all. I am, trust me. I'm not saying I'm going to see everything. I'm doing my best though. Back to what I was saying about planter efficiency, I'm really surprised that this is actually burning about the same amount of fuel as the soybean planter. I would have pegged this closer to a gallon per acre, and it definitely will come out higher on average once you account for road fuel, because that's not something you see in your raw efficiency here, is how much fuel it takes to get from one farm to the other, although it's probably negligible in the overall scheme of things. Not too shabby out there. If there wasn't a rain coming in close proximity, we'd have this planted in a few hours. dry field of corn stalks on your way home. Doesn't hurt to pull in, unfold, and see if you can work it. Worst case scenario, I fold up and leave. Gonna work around, see what kind of shape it's in. Sometimes the luck of problems just amazes me. How did that chain get perfectly hooked on that bolt? I'll show you so you can fully visualize what's going on. This chain that holds up the drag chain harrow, it's one of 4 on each side, has miraculously caught itself in the bolt. Lifting here is not the problem, it's that this is too taut, would be the correct term. So I'm going to try and pry it with this wrench that seems to have seen better days. That easy. That's why you keep a hammer and a partially broken crescent wrench. You never know when they're going to come in handy. 50 acres an hour. That's pretty impressive, which is necessary because there is a storm on the horizon. I've been getting some warnings on my phone and on the radio. So our time out here is limited. Looking like someone might set the sprinklers off. By some strange turn of luck, we managed to get one field done without it raining, so we may go ahead and attempt to do another one. Maybe we should have planted that corn because it's already 3:30. They were calling for rain at noon, and we've yet to see any. If we had known that the rain, which was forecasted for about noon, was going to be 9 or 10 hours late, today would have looked much differently, and that's exactly what's happened. As opposed to postponing corn planting on a few of those fields, corn planter would have been running. I don't know about soybeans just for the fact that none of our corn stalks are really super dry. They're going to need to dry out anyways before we can plant them. It's both unfortunate and fortunate at the same time because they've lowered the total rainfall they're expecting in this 2-day period down to about 3/4 of an inch versus 2 inches. On the other side of the book though, we could have had another 200 or 300 acres of corn in the ground. On the bright side, we have managed to get a couple hundred acres of ground worked that we were not intending on having done today. That's a victory all around because once it does rain, I'm almost certain it will at some point, this will all dry up pretty quick since the crust has been broken up and leveled out. No time to stop and fuel. Storms are brewing pretty quickly over there. Katie called in the big guns to help finish a field of corn stalks before we get rained out. So that's where I'm headed. That's one spooky looking storm. The cavalry has arrived. So much for a flawless entrance like a superhero. These silly things are always acting up. Okay, now we can save the day. Pretend that didn't happen. This isn't a race you're capable of winning, Katie. I think the 9.620's got the 9.460 beat pretty easily, even with the bigger field cultivator. We got a couple more acres to work, and this storm's getting uncomfortably close right now. You find a whole new gear in the tractor when there's a rain coming. Don't know where it comes from, but you ask the tractor for everything it's got. We're trying to get this worked. It's not really a do or die type thing, but it's more of a saving us time in the future deal. Hurry up, faster! Faster! Even though it's as fast as you can go. so I'll give her the right of way. Our auto steer lines aren't synced. We have different size field cultivators, and that's about as perfect as it could have worked out for us right there. One tractor is safely headed home. The rain hasn't gotten here yet, but I just checked the radar. It's getting stronger as it gets closer. The wind's blowing the storm in. It's coming out of the west. I would speculate that I've got about 30 seconds to get out of here and avoid the worst of the storm. If not, I'm gonna get getting wet. Guess I should double check and make sure I'm not cultivating the road. I'm not, that's good. No, I guess we're gonna test out the windshield wipers. What in the world? Holy. Oh my gosh, that's a gusher. What? Why do I have a windshield wiper over there? Where's this one now? That makes more sense. Oh, good thing I got flashers. I'm gonna have to stop in the middle of the road. I can't see. I literally cannot see. Oh, I feel like I'm in a car wash. Holy cow. It's easing up a little bit, that's good. I can deal with this. I'm willing to put up with that amount of rainfall to get the tractor washed off because it's a lot cleaner than it was about 5 minutes ago. At the very least, the intensity of that rainfall right there makes me somewhat grateful that I didn't plant anything today. That would have done a number to compact that soil. All the force of that water hitting the ground almost turns it into concrete if you really powder it up with a field cultivator and plant it. Shouldn't be an issue for everything that's been in the ground for a day or two, just for the fact that it had time to air. You know, I'm passing a couple hundred acres that we planted yesterday. It still looks phenomenal. Katie valet parked at her house. I don't have that privilege. I'm gonna get as close to my truck as possible. Wow, that was one heck of a burst of rain. Look at the water all over the yard here. Just running off. She's close to thirsty after a long day of tillage, although we did have room to go for another few hours if we needed to. All in all, I think it's safe to call that a surprisingly productive day of tillage. Woke up this morning thinking we weren't going to get a single thing done, and the rain that was supposed to happen 8 or 9 hours ago finally happened. 300 or 400 acres of tillage later, Katie and I knocked out quite a bit, although most of it was not in the same field. She was around here doing stuff. I was up north working corn stalks. The combination of us is pretty effective in covering ground. When I'm running 45 or 50 acres an hour and she's probably doing 40 an hour, I really don't know, 35 or 40 an hour, that's a lot. That'll help us a lot because once this rain subsides, it warms back up a little bit. All of that ground we work will dry quicker, which means we can get into the field in a much shorter time frame than we would have if we hadn't worked it. That being said, we are getting pretty close to May, and I do not like to have crops not planted in May. It's not abnormal for that to happen. A lot of years, May would normally be when we get a majority of our planting done. But statistically speaking, you want your crops planted in April, especially your soybeans, because they need to grow to yield. That being said, don't know what the future holds, but for me, I'm going home. I think that's more than enough farming for one video. I appreciate you all tuning in. Like the video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you want to see more. And comment down below if you have any questions. You know I love to talk about farming. Have a great day, everyone. Peace!